Now, the World Bank said recently that the recession will be deeper than it estimated in March. It now expects the world economy to contract 2.9% this year, compared with an earlier forecast 1.7% decline. Well, Mansoor Dailami is with us. He's manager of International Finance Development Prospects Group, and he joins us this morning here in Singapore. Welcome to Lion City.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show.
Mansoor, just wondering, what do you think is the biggest risk to the Asian recovery story this year?
Well, I think given the fact that most of the Asian countries, their economies are very much export-oriented, then the biggest risk is the recovery in the global economy does not gain momentum as is expected right now.
So given its strong reliance on exports and given that domestic economies aren't so great to compensate for the drop, what's the outlook like? Is there a risk that it will grow even slower than the World Bank's projection?
I think our projection are being rather very conservative, on the conservative side. And that's obviously I've taken into account some possibility that the Asian economies would gain momentum, particularly in the third quarter, fourth quarter of 2009. And very much then from then on depend on how much world exports demand picks up momentum. And that will become a very important factor in determining the pace of recovery and the sustainability of growth on the Asian side.
So what you're saying is there's a risk that it could be slower than the projection that you have come up with, correct?
Well, there are always risks. I mean, there are always downside risks, particularly in the current economic juncture, which financial market is still in the process of normalization. I think the recent financial news have been very, very positive, and we are very delighted. We are very encouraged by that. But nevertheless, there are still some risks in the global economy which might affect Asian countries, given the fact that they're very much export-oriented economies.
But public finances, they're escalating, government's printing money. I mean, surely that's a risk that should be considered as well.
Of course. I think the risk of increasing public sector debt, particularly from the mature markets, would be important in determining the pace of interest rate at the international level. And that obviously would have impact on the pace of capital flows to developing countries, including some of the Asian countries.